Hello, this is Peter Bell, and I'm here with Mr. Don Lay of Medallion Resources. Hello, Don.
Hey Peter, good to talk to you again.
Thank you. April 1st, 2019, all kinds of things going on out there. Congratulations on the recent financing.
So thanks so much. Yeah, we closed almost $500,000, or excuse me, almost $600,000 late last week, and we'll tidy up the last $35,000 or so shortly here.
Great. Lots to discuss, things heating up on the macro side around your business. But maybe the specifics here, there was some good info, plans for the use of proceeds, largely in line with um, where the company has been headed to for some time now. So,
Yeah, we're developing a process to extract rare earths from monazite, which is a byproduct mineral. And I mean, it's rare earths have been extracted from monazite for a long time. Although we're improving the process to make it a continuous process and low cost operation, or lower cost than traditionally the old batch process would be, as well as recycling of reagents and energy and such to make it nice and make it very clean and efficient. And we're doing that work with the Saskatchewan Research Council, which is based in Saskatoon and is one of the preeminent metallurgical laboratories in North America, certainly. That work's been led by Kurt Forrester, a metallurgist out of the UK that I've been working with for Medallion's been working with for a number of years, and he's a super smart, accomplished guy that's helping us out on that work. And the materials, byproduct monazite, it comes from heavy mineral sands mining operations. And the nice thing is it's available as a byproduct of another operation. So we're not in a position where we've got to develop a new mine and a new metallurgical pathway to process material in order to get to rare earth production. So it's low operating costs and really low capital costs compared to other approaches in the marketplace.
really glad to see you guys using the NRC research funding there, as well as we've seen a couple news releases recently. A good multiplier on your spending. Not the largest amounts of money involved in some of those programs, but significant.
Yeah, so the NRC is the National Research Council, and they have an IRAP program which funds novel research and development for Canadian companies. So we've received a couple of funding allotments from them to work on both the work at the Saskatchewan Research Council and then some novel work we're doing at the University of Toronto in their chemical engineering department on the phosphate regeneration part of our process. So we're really looking to, wherever possible, take advantage of good government programs to aid in the development of this novel process, and be in a position where the work that we're doing through these next two phases of work will get us to a position where we can get an economic study done for a plant in later this year. We're looking to get that PEA done.
Exceptional. Thank you. That is a long time coming. And
Yeah, no, we've been working at it like the rare earth marketplace. There was a boom for your listeners, Peter, that might not remember or weren't around or have hazier memories. There was a big boom in rare earths, sort of late 2009 through 2012, when in both Australia and Canada, the number of publicly traded issuers that talked about rare earths were involved in it went to like 300 or something. And so anybody that ever had a sniff of rare earths in their property went out and raised money and drilled, try to get into production. There's now 15, 16 companies left in the space. The market interest contracted dramatically, but the use of rare earths is increasing, especially driven by their use in magnets. And Medallion's one of those companies that's continued to sort of move forward, albeit the last few years at a slower pace, just because of the lack of capital. But we figure we've got a better idea for getting into the rare earth business than most, and certainly much better than the hard rock projects. And so that's the pathway that we've been pursuing by going after this byproduct mineral for processing and extracting the rare earths. And it just seems like the market tone seems to be changing just relatively recently. So it's exciting time spot to be in.
certainly, one of the key issues there at the on the global stage with the Linus and everything in Malaysia, um, radioactive waste. Lots of questions around all that, but it ties in specifically, I guess, with shipping monazite as well. And so maybe I'd ask about that. People who I've talked to have wondered about, your ability to ship sufficient amounts of that.
Yeah, so for the first thing for people to note is that radioactive elements, the two principal sort of naturally occurring radioactive elements, are thorium and uranium, and they're associated with virtually every rare earth deposit wherever it's found. That just happens to be the chemistry of rare earths, if you will. So radioactivity and rare earths are intimately associated and always will be. That's just laws of nature, if you will. Um, the uh, the monazite we're referring to, that we're looking to process, is byproduct monazite, and it's a byproduct of heavy mineral sands mining operations, which mine beach sands principally for the titanium and the zircon. And as they mine the beaches and process the beach sand, they end up concentrating monazite. Monazite's a rare earth phosphate mineral that also comes with some maybe 5% thorium and 0.5% uranium. And the elements contained in the monazite make monazite what they call a class 7 material. So it's a radioactive material by its nature. And because it's radioactive material, that means it's got to be stored correctly, handled correctly, shipped correctly, processed correctly, and the waste disposed of correctly, and all under some government licensing and approvals. There's literally tens of thousands of radioactive shipments that go around the world every year. Everything from smoke detectors in your home, which have some radioactivity associated with them, to hospital equipment and medicines, to uranium yellow cake, to nuclear waste. All these are radioactive, and they're all considered class 7 material, and they've all got to be placarded differently and stored differently and shipped differently and handled differently based on their nature. So monazite sand we buy is going to come in bags that have got special sealing around it, put in containers or loaded into ships or trucks or trains or whatever, and it's all going to be done properly and correctly. But shipping around radioactive material just means doing it properly under the right licenses and guidelines between the right countries. There's nothing specially magical about it. I mean, if you're shipping around gasoline, you've got to do certain things as well. So, to make sure it's vented correctly. So the same is true of radioactivity. So shipping it around demands certain extra requirements and challenges, if you will, which sets up barriers to entry for other people to get into the business, because it's not quite as simple as shipping coal or wheat or something. But it's not like it's impossible or difficult to do. It's just got to be done properly. That's all.
Wonderful. Yeah. And those barriers to entry become all the more important as things heat up in the rare earth space more generally.
Absolutely. Yeah. The monazite mineral, that byproduct mineral that is available from the heavy mineral sands industry, is well known, well understood within that industry and within the rare earth industry.
Yeah.
And but all of these things are tricky or not simple to do. So they require developing the right business model, the right relationships, and doing things correctly over a period of time to engender the trust of your business partners in doing that. And we've been at this a while, so we know what we're doing in this area.
And a question for you about all that, hearing you say that monazite's been processed for rare earths for decades, I wonder what's with the research then?
Well, fair question. So there's different ways of processing different minerals, and that there's both, so they call them pathways, if you will, metallurgical pathways of that. And was a sulfuric acid approach to processing monazite, and there's a caustic approach to doing it using hydrochloric acid. Both of these work and successful. The caustic approach allows the phosphate, which is typically about 35% of the monazite, to turn into a useful product. So because of that, and phosphate's use as both fertilizer, animal feed, and other uses, we decided to go that route. More importantly, though, we're taking the approach that doing it in North America means that where labor is more expensive, we would like to take this approach at using a continuous approach, recycling of the reagents as much as possible, and making most effective use of the energy. So an automated process lends itself well to it. So we're enhancing the well-known process, which is a batch process, into a continuous flow process, which
Yeah.
we think has got a number of both capital improvements, immediate operational improvements, and then over time, longer term operational improvements where we can fine tune things to get better recoveries and more efficient use of reagents and energy and such. So it's kind of exciting because we're not reinventing something, but we're definitely improving something that's being done, and we look to provide more color to that sort of over the next number of months as we're completing our completing our test work, and then later on our engineering work into the process.
It's wonderful. It's been a couple of years already that I've been following all this and continue to wonder what it's all going to look like when it comes out. And yeah, it's pretty far out on the risk curve here, really, all around. But that's what it is with micro cap and nano cap companies here. Medallion trading around a $3 million Canadian valuation, I think it is.
Yeah, we're there's, I think I mentioned, say, about 15 publicly traded companies out there in the rare earth space. The biggest, of course, would be Lynas, the Australian producer, which would produce about 22,000 tons of rare earths a year. And then there's a number of North American and Australian listed developers that have hard rock projects. Their market values typically range from, say, 15 million to maybe, or 10 million to maybe $120 million, something like that. They've all got deposits they've drilled out for the most part, and have either developed or are developing their metallurgical pathways to process that material. The typical capex to get those projects into production is at least 300 million for the smallest, up to a billion or $1.5 billion for the largest of those groups. So in comparison, our pathway is much cheaper in terms of plant. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in a couple of years to get to production versus maybe 8 to 10 years for most of those hard rock projects. So it's a very different mechanism using this byproduct approach, and it's a great way to get to production more quickly in our view. So,
Yeah.
but I'm not saying there's no risks. Of course, there's risks associated with these things, but we think it's a smart approach in today's marketplace.
Well, and again, today's marketplace is heating up. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Any thoughts on your favorite rare earth element news story recently?
Well, the big news last week, Peter, was that Lynas, which I referred to earlier, which is the big Australian rare earth producer, and the biggest outside of China by quite a bit, was the subject of a takeover by a company called Wesfarmers, a large Australian-based conglomerate, which knows Lynas quite well through history, and they've offered to take out Lynas at $2.25 Australian per share, which was a 45% premium to the current traded price of the Lynas stock on the Australian Stock Exchange at the time. So Lynas has since rebuffed their takeover offer and has said it's insufficient. And it's not surprising because Lynas was having some challenges negotiating with the Malaysian government. They mine in Australia and they ship the ore and process it in Malaysia. So the principal processing operations are in Malaysia, and they've had some trouble with the Malaysian government. But it's interesting because Lynas mines hard rock monazite, not byproduct like ourselves, and their monazite is rich in NdPr. These are the key magnet metals that power electric vehicles. So it's not just the battery metals, your lithium and cobalt that have got the market's interest. It seems that NdPr, the magnet metals, if you will, which power the electric motors themselves, are getting some interest out there. So it's interesting times, and I think that might be an inflection point in the market for rare earths, and particularly based on these magnet metals.
Yeah, wonderful. My favorite article or news story was China as a net importer of rare earths in 2018. Apparently, Adamas intelligence and all had predicted that, and it was fairly well understood, but it seemed to be a big surprise to me, and something of a surprising headline to hear. Yeah, so
Yeah, so it's interesting that China it's recognized they produce sort of typically 80 to 85% of the world's rare earths, and that's both the mining as well as the processing of them. But they're also the biggest consumer of rare earths. They would consume, I think, probably 65 or 70% of the rare earths as well. Although a lot of those rare earths would go into products that are then exported from China, so they'd be contained within it. But it controls both the mining as well as the processing and the value chain through into the finished goods that are then exported. So that's interesting news, of course. And Lynas being the big producer outside of China, and not surprising, American, German, and Japanese industrial companies like the automakers and such are quite keen to at least have diversification of supply chain, and maybe not have it all dependent upon a country who's has a very clear industrial policy of dominating manufacturing with their Made in China 2025 plans, and a number of other things. But without a doubt, China is going to be a great big vehicle manufacturer in the future. But Ford and GM and Toyota and VW and BMW are big car companies too, so they've all got supply and security of supply issues they're wrestling with over time, and
yes,
certainly rare earths play a role in that, especially with the magnet metals that are needed to power electric and hybrid vehicles. So I think the rare earths are likely to get increasing attention over the next number of years, and excite the marketplaces. So after being sleepy for a number of years, I'm happy to see that coming.
yeah. And yourself as a plus 10% shareholder of Medallion.
Yes, well, so I was accumulating the Medallion stock. I thought it was undervalued for where it was at by the marketplace, and I've gone over 10% holdings and about 17% on a fully diluted basis. So happy to, for people that are keen to make sure the management is invested in the company, they can look at Medallion and be quite happy with that in our particular case. And yeah, so I think it's a terrific opportunity, and exciting time to be building the business, frankly. So
Yeah, certainly. Don Lay, President and CEO of Medallion Resources. Thank you very much.
thank you, Peter. Talk soon.